My name is Benjamin Carter. I'm 63 years old, and for most of my life, I loved only one woman. The strange thing is, she never knew. Not really. And no, this isn't one of those stories where I finally got the girl. This isn't a story about revenge, or betrayal, or regret. It's a story about love, about letting go, about fatherhood, and about how life sometimes gives you a different blessing than the one you spent years praying for. Because the greatest love story of my life wasn't with the woman I couldn't have. It was with the daughter I chose. But before I tell you about my daughter, Lily, I need to tell you about another Lily. The first one. The one who unknowingly changed the course of my entire life. I first met Lily Anderson when I was 14 years old. Freshman year. Springfield High School. Springfield, Missouri. She was the new girl. And I still remember that first day. I was sitting in history class pretending to understand algebra homework when our teacher walked in with a girl behind her. Long brown hair. Bright green eyes. A smile that somehow made the entire room brighter. Class, this is Lily Anderson. And just like every teenage boy in that room, I instantly forgot what the teacher was saying, including my best friend, Matthew Reed. Matthew and I had known each other since elementary school. He was everything I wasn't. Confident, funny, outgoing. Girls naturally liked him. Meanwhile, I was quiet, awkward. The kind of kid who spent Friday nights reading comic books and watching baseball with his dad. But somehow, life had a sense of humor, because Lily ended up sitting right beside me. And that was the beginning of everything. At first, we were just friends. The three of us. Me, Matthew, and Lily. Lunch together. Homework together. Movies. Football games. School dances. Study sessions. Everything. By junior year, we were inseparable. Everyone thought Matthew and Lily would end up together. But back then, neither of them seemed interested. And secretly, neither was I. Or at least that's what I told myself. Because admitting that I loved her made things real, and reality was terrifying, especially for someone like me. I wasn't handsome. I wasn't popular. I wasn't special. At least that's what I believed. So instead of risking rejection, I chose safety, friendship, and looking back, fear. Senior year came, then graduation, and somehow, we all ended up attending the University of Missouri together. Life felt perfect, like one of those coming-of-age movies. Same friend group, same jokes, same traditions, and every year, my feelings for Lily grew stronger. But my courage never did, because every time I thought about telling her, a voice inside my head would whisper, what if you ruin everything? What if she says no? What if you lose her completely? So I said nothing, year after year, and sometimes, silence becomes its own prison. By college, people assumed we were dating, especially because Lily and I spent so much time together. Late-night coffee runs, study sessions, road trips, movie marathons. She knew my dreams, my fears, my insecurities, everything. And I knew hers. She wanted children someday, a family, a little house, a golden retriever, Christmas traditions, simple things. And every time she described that dream, I'd imagine myself in it. But I never said a word, because imagination was safer than rejection, or so I thought. Then came senior year, and one night changed everything. We were all hanging out at O'Malley's bar, just the usual crowd, laughing, talking, celebrating because graduation was only months away. And suddenly, Matthew stood up, glass in hand, smiling. I've got something to say. Everyone cheered, including me. Then he looked directly at Lily and got down on one knee. The entire bar exploded, people screaming, whistling, clapping, and there I sat, frozen, because in that moment, I realized something horrible. I had waited too long. Matthew looked at her. Lily Anderson, will you go out with me? The room became silent. And then, she smiled, the biggest smile I'd ever seen, and said yes. Everybody cheered, including me, at least outwardly. Inside, my heart shattered, and nobody noticed. That night, I drove home alone, pulled into my apartment parking lot, and cried. Not because Matthew betrayed me. He didn't. He had no idea. Neither of them did. The truth was painful, but simple. Nobody stole Lily from me, because I never tried. Fear stole her, and I hated myself for that. Not Matthew, not Lily, myself, because I had spent 8 years loving someone in silence, and silence had finally cost me everything. 3 months later, they got married, young, happy, in love, and I stood beside Matthew as his best man, smiling, taking pie, I was 48 years old, and I had absolutely no idea that the greatest blessing of my life was waiting for me in the most unexpected place imaginable. At that point, my life had become predictable. Wake up, go to work, come home, watch baseball, read, sleep, repeat. Some people called it peaceful. Others called it lonely. Honestly, I wasn't sure which one it was anymore. But one thing I knew for certain, life hadn't turned out the way I imagined. Not that I blamed anyone. Not Lily. Not Matthew. Not fate. Life simply happens. And somewhere along the way, I had accepted that maybe marriage and fatherhood just weren't in the cards for me. Or so I thought. It was a rainy Thursday evening. I remember because I had just finished a 12-hour shift. I was exhausted. All I wanted was takeout and a baseball game. But God apparently had other plans. As I pulled into my driveway, my phone rang. It was my younger sister, Claire. Now Claire had always been the emotional one in the family. Kind-hearted, compassionate, the type of person who adopted stray dogs and cried during commercials. Ben. Hey, Claire. Her voice sounded strange. Can I ask you something? Sure. Promise you won't laugh. I smiled. When have I ever laughed at you? She took a deep breath. Have you ever thought about adoption? I almost laughed. Not because it was funny. Because it was unexpected. Adoption. Yeah. Claire, I'm 48. So. I'm single. So. I work too much. So. I chuckled. You really thought this through, huh? I'm serious. Then she said something I'll never forget. Ben, you've spent your entire life loving people. Maybe it's time someone gave that love back. I didn't know what to say. Because honestly, children had always been the dream. I just assumed that dream had expired. Over the next few weeks, I couldn't stop thinking about it. Everywhere I went, I noticed families. Parents. Children. Little girls holding their fathers' hands. And for the first time in years, something inside me started hurting again. Not heartbreak. Longing. The kind I'd buried decades earlier. And one Saturday morning, I walked into an adoption agency. Not because I had decided. Not really. I was just curious. Or at least that's what I told myself. But life has a funny way of disguising destiny as curiosity. The woman at the front desk smiled. Can I help you? I almost turned around. Seriously, I felt ridiculous. A 48-year-old bachelor. No wife. No experience raising children. No clue what I was doing. But somehow I stayed. 3 hours later, I walked out with brochures, paperwork, and fear. Lots of fear. Because suddenly, this wasn't just an idea. This was real. And real things are scary, especially when you've spent decades protecting yourself from disappointment. The process took nearly 18 months. Background checks, home studies, interviews, paperwork, more paperwork. At times I almost gave up, not because I didn't want it, because I was terrified. What if I wasn't enough? What if I failed? What if a child deserved better? But every time fear whispered, something stronger pushed back. Hope. And hope. Hope can be stubborn. Then one morning, everything changed. I received a call. Mr. Carter? Speaking. We'd like you to come in. My heart nearly exploded. I drove there in record time. And when I arrived, I saw her. She couldn't have been more than 6 months old. Tiny, beautiful, curly brown hair, big eyes, wrapped in a pink blanket. She was asleep, peaceful, completely unaware that she was about to change someone's life forever. Mine. I sat down. And for the first time in nearly 50 years, I was speechless. The social worker smiled. Would you like to hold her? My hands were shaking, literally shaking. I nodded. And the moment she was placed in my arms, everything changed. People talk about love at first sight. I never believed in it. Until that moment. Because suddenly, nothing else mattered. Not regrets. Not loneliness. Not lost dreams. Nothing. Just her. And then the social worker asked, have you thought about a name? I smiled. Because I already knew. Maybe some people would think it was strange. Maybe some would judge me. But deep inside, I knew. Lily. She smiled. Lily Carter? I looked down at that tiny little girl sleeping peacefully in my arms. And tears filled my eyes. Lily Carter. That was the first time I said her name. And somehow, it felt like God himself had whispered it into my heart. Not because she was replacing someone. Nobody could. But because the name Lily had represented love for most of my life. And now, love was finally looking back at me. Those first few months were chaos. Pure chaos. I didn't know how to change diapers. Didn't know how to prepare formula. A truth that would change both of our lives forever. For years, I prayed that moment would never come. Not because I was ashamed. Never. But because I knew questions have a way of changing people. And some answers carry a lot of weight. By then, Lily Carter was 24 years old. And every day, I found myself wondering the same thing. How did time move so fast? It felt like only yesterday I was teaching her how to ride a bicycle. Now she was a beautiful young woman. Smart, kind, funny, and honestly, way too much like me. She had my love for baseball, my terrible cooking skills, my habit of crying during emotional movies. And somehow, despite sharing none of my DNA, she was more my daughter than anything biology could explain. One Friday evening, she came over for dinner, which wasn't unusual. Even after college, she'd still visit every week. It had become our tradition. Friday nights, pizza, baseball, and arguing over which ice cream flavor was superior. That night, though, something seemed different. She looked nervous. Really nervous. Dad, yeah. Can I ask you something? I smiled. When have you ever needed permission? She laughed, then became serious again. What do you know about my biological parents? And just like that, my heart sank. Not because I didn't expect it. I always knew the day would come. I just wasn't ready. Or maybe no parent ever is. I put down my fork. Not much. She nodded. You told me that before. Because it's true. I know. Then she smiled. I'm not angry. I know. I'm not looking for another family. I know. She reached across the table and grabbed my hand. Dad, you are my family. God, that girl always knew exactly what to say. I was just curious. And honestly, I understood. Who wouldn't be? Everyone deserves answers. Everyone deserves to understand where they came from. Even if home isn't where you started, it's where you're loved. Over the next few months, she searched. Not obsessively, just enough to satisfy her curiosity. And eventually, she found them. Or rather, information about them. Her biological mother had been 17, scared, alone, and unable to care for a child. Her biological father had disappeared long before Lily was born. Reading those records broke my heart. Not because I blamed them. Life is complicated. People make difficult choices. And because of those choices, I got to become her father. How could I hate that? One night, Lily sat beside me on the porch swing. Something we'd done since she was a little girl. She rested her head on my shoulder. Dad, yeah. Do you think she loved me? I knew who she meant. Her biological mother. And I answered without hesitation. Yes. Really? Absolutely. Then why give me away? I smiled softly. Because sometimes loving someone means giving them what you can't. She started crying, and I wrapped my arm around her. The same way I had when she was 5, 10, 15, and now 24. Some things never change. I don't feel angry. That's okay. I feel sad. That's okay too. Then she smiled. But mostly I feel grateful. I looked at her. For what? For you. And just like that, a 60-year-old man started crying again. Some habits never change. A year later, life surprised me once again. Because one Sunday afternoon, Lily walked into my house looking happier than I'd ever seen her. And beside her stood a young man. Tall, polite, nervous, very nervous. Dad, she smiled. This is Ethan. Poor kid looked terrified. And honestly, I enjoyed it. Maybe a little too much. I shook his hand. Relax, son. I'm not that scary. He laughed nervously. Yes, sir. Sir. God help him. I immediately liked him. Over the next year, Ethan became family. And what impressed me most wasn't how much he loved my daughter. It was how much he respected her. He listened, supported her, made her laugh. And most importantly, he treated her heart gently. Because when you've loved someone your entire life, you notice those things. One evening, after Lily left the room, Ethan turned to me. Mr. Carter? Call me Ben. He smiled. Ben. He took a deep breath. I want to marry your daughter. I laughed. I figured. But I want your blessing. And suddenly, I couldn't speak. Because in that moment, I remembered being 22 years old, standing beside Matthew Reed, watching him ask out Lily Anderson, and wondering what life would have looked like if I'd been brave. But looking at Ethan, I felt no regret, only gratitude. Because this young man loved my daughter. And that's all that mattered. I smiled. You already have it. 6 months later, Lily Carter got engaged. And I cried. Again. At this point, crying had basically become a personality trait. My daughter laughed. Dad, you're impo. Part 4, final. Her voice was shaking, and what she told me next would remind me once again how precious life really is. Ben, it's me. Lily. Yeah. Are you okay? There was silence. Then I heard something I'd never heard from her before. Fear. Real fear. Matthew's in the hospital. I sat upright. What happened? Heart attack. My blood ran cold. What? He collapsed this morning. Oh my God. The doctors don't know yet. And suddenly, 50 years of friendship came rushing back. Little league games. High school. College. His wedding. My daughter's birthday parties. Christmas dinners. Vacations. Half my life. Half my life had been spent with Matthew Reed. And now, I was terrified of losing him. I drove straight to the hospital. And when I arrived, I found Lily Anderson sitting alone. She looked older. Not old. Just tired. Scared. Human. And for the first time in 60 years, I saw not the girl I once loved, but the woman who had shared most of my life. A friend. A sister. Family. She stood up and hugged me. And suddenly, she broke. Not crying. Not sobbing. Breaking. Ben, I know. What if I lose him? You won't. But what if I do? And honestly, I had no answer. Because sometimes life doesn't give answers. Only moments. And all we can do is survive them. Thankfully, Matthew survived. The doctors caught it in time. But something changed in all of us. Because moments like that remind you something uncomfortable. We're not young anymore. Time is undefeated. And none of us are promised tomorrow. A month later, Matthew sat beside me on his porch. Looking thinner. Older. But alive. Close one. I laughed. Yeah. He smiled. You know something? What? I've had a good life. I smiled. You have? No. He pointed toward the house where Lily Anderson was laughing inside. I really have. Then he looked at me. And so have you. And somehow, we both knew what he meant. The wedding day arrived. And I wasn't ready. Not emotionally. Not even close. Because my little girl, my baby, the 6-month-old wrapped in a pink blanket, was now 26 years old. And she looked beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. Standing there in her white dress. Smiling. Happy. And suddenly, I remembered every moment. Her first steps. Her first day of school. Teaching her how to drive. Holding her after her first heartbreak. Prom night. College graduation. Everything. And God help me, I started crying. Again. My daughter laughed. Dad, what? You're ruining your suit. I can't help it. She hugged me and quietly whispered, You've been crying since 1998. And we both laughed. Then came the father-daughter dance. And honestly, that almost destroyed me. Because she rested her head on my shoulder exactly the way she had when she was 5 years old. And as we danced, she whispered, Thank you. I smiled. For what? For choosing me. Those 4 words nearly broke me. I looked at her. No. Tears filled my eyes. Sweetheart, you chose me. And she started crying too. Dad. No. I smiled. You made me a father. And you made me a daughter. And there, in the middle of that dance floor, surrounded by family, we both cried like babies. And neither of us cared. A few months after the wedding, life settled down. Lily and Ethan were happy. Really happy. And honestly, that was enough for me. I never needed grandchildren. Never needed anything more. Watching my daughter smile. That was everything. Then one afternoon she called me. Dad. Yeah. Can you come over? Everything okay? Yeah. Her voice sounded strange. Excited. So I drove over. And when I walked inside, I saw Ethan standing beside her. Both smiling. Both crying. And suddenly, I knew. Oh no. They laughed. Oh yes. And Lily held up a tiny ultrasound picture. Dad. Tears filled her eyes. You're going to be a grandfather. And ladies and gentlemen, I completely lost it. I mean completely. I cried harder than anyone in that room. Poor Ethan didn't know whether to laugh or call 911. 9 months later, I held my granddaughter for the first time. And something incredible happened. Something I never expected. Because as I looked down at that tiny little girl, I saw myself. Not biologically. Not physically. Spiritually. And I finally understood something. Love doesn't care about blood. Love doesn't care about DNA. Love cares about presence, sacrifice, commitment, and showing up. Every single day. That's what makes a parent. Not genetics. Love. A year later, Matthew and Lily Anderson came over for Thanksgiving. And after dinner, the 4 of us sat outside. Just talking, laughing, remembering old stories. And suddenly, Lily Anderson smiled. You know something, Ben? What? You would have been a wonderful husband. I